Hey everybody, Brad here. So I wanted to do a quick walkthrough of my Sinatra project. You can find it on my GitHub page at github.com/bshrog620. It's called Creative Hub, and the idea behind this project was a nonprofit that I've helped out in the past. It's a makerspace called the NWA Creative Hub, and they have a lot of equipment that they want users to have access to. But some of this equipment needs some certification, and we've had the idea in the past of somehow having a check-in where a user that wants to use some equipment can scan a badge or enter a user ID or something like that, and a laptop or an Arduino board can make a request to see if that user has the proper certification to use the equipment, and then if so, unlock it for them. And so this was kind of developing the framework for that. It's got user ID, ability to log in and log out. It's got an administrator privilege for certain users, and then it's got some equipment models. But all this works together basically for this whole certification and checking process. So let's go over here, and we're going to real quick just look through some of the different models. There's a few of them, and this is the wrong project I have open here. 1 second. And let's get into the right folder. Alright, there we go. This will help. Alright, here we are. So there's several different models in here, and I guess, so far in the projects that we've done, there's just been 2, 3, maybe 4 models that we're dealing with. And I know this looks like a lot, but really when it comes down to it, there's nothing more complicated here than anything else we've already done. There are several models that all work together. So just starting here at the top, for example, there's users, which is kind of that, one of the key classes, and equipment. That's the other big one. So just to kind of demonstrate how these relationships work, right? We have users, and they can have many certificates. And because they can have many certificates, and certificates can belong to many users, then we had to have this other join table model right here, right? And of course, users can take many tests, and again, tests can belong to many users. So again, there's another join table model here for that relationship. And then we're just making sure that that users have all the proper information and that sort of thing. So like I said, nothing too fancy there. So let's look real quick at the certificates. Again, they can belong to many users, they can belong to many tests, and they have many equipment. And the last thing I wanted to look at was just the tests. Again, tests, they are made up of questions, so a test has many questions, and the questions then, they belong to a test, so it's not a has many to has many relationship, it's just a has many to one relationship, and then they have a lot of answers. So that's the other thing that goes into our a key component of this, are the answers. And basically the answer, we'll look at some tests here in a second, and maybe this will all make a little more sense rather than me talking through it. So let's just get started in doing this. One important thing that I learned kind of, I guess the hard way, was just when you think you're done with your code, install everything fresh from the beginning and make sure that it works as you expect. I made a seed file to help initiate the database, and when I made the seed file, not everything was perfect in it, but I just made the corrections on the fly and have been working with it ever since. And when I thought I was all wrapped up with this code, another fellow student, Meg, at Learn, took a look at the code for me, and she wrote back. She said, "Sorry, but I think you need to look back through some stuff because it's not working for me." And no reason for her to apologize. It was basically all the issues came down to my seed file. So that's just my word of advice. When you think you're done, make sure you have everything pushed to GitHub, uninstall your application and reinstall it fresh and see if it still works as you expect it to. So real quick, let's just run our migrations and our seed file here. I don't think I cleared out. I think when I deleted my database, that was actually on that footer project that I had open earlier. So let's run that migration again. There we go. All right, and so that is all loaded up. So to kind of illustrate some of this stuff, I'm actually going to open these up. I'm going to open up 2 tabs. We'll do a we'll have a left and I need to run shotgun first. Let's see if we're connected, and there we are. And we're going to do an incognito window also. We'll do it over here on the right. This will allow us to basically, on the left side here, we're going to log in as just a regular user, and on the right side, we're going to log in as an admin. This will kind of help us see the differences between what each level of user might see. So over here on the left in the seed file, there's a guy named Mark, and he uses a super secret password called Mark as well. So we're going to log in as him. And over here on the right, we're going to log in as admin, who also uses a super secret password of admin. So there we are. So we can see already from the beginning there's a couple slight differences. Basically just this, that over here we have a users link in our nav bar, where over here on the left we're missing that. Let's go to users real quick and see what we have. And over here, let's see if Mark can go to users. He can't. He doesn't get a message that he can't do it, but it didn't let him do it. So maybe we'll make a note and go add in a message for that here in a second. So real quick, as the admin, we can see basically who all's in the database. Another aspect of this that I built in was just that admins can create reports, right? So if you needed to find everyone that was certified for a particular piece of equipment, or find volunteers or other administrators that you could pass off some duties to or something like that, or maybe who's behind on payments, you can pull that up and it'll list out everyone that's not paid, for example. Real quick, so we've seen how the users are different. Let's look real quick at tests. We'll pull up each of these so we can see how they're different. So over here on the left side, Mark can see what tests are available to take. He can see what certificates they apply to. And the big difference over here on the right for the administrator is that they have an ability to create a new test. We'll be getting into creation of a test and kind of what that looks like in a little bit. And that's not good. Mark should not have the ability to delete tests. So let's fix that real quick. So we're in the tests control. Actually, that's going to be in the view itself that we need to remove those buttons. And that would be in the show. And there we are right there. So our form's showing up at the top, but we didn't put a check in to make sure that it's not. So our users, there's a field name called isAdmin, and it's just a simple Boolean, so it allows us to just do a quick user.isAdmin to get it true or false. So let's go back over here and see how that worked out now. There we are. And actually, I'm noticing some other issues here. Mark should be able to, well, no, he can't take the test. He actually shouldn't be able to see too much information here, period. Most of this information, I need to think about how to just restructure this in general. We'll think about that here later. So for Mark to actually take the test, he shouldn't be able to see the answers. So let's actually just move this. Let's move this block down further. I'll think about, as we're doing this walkthrough, what information I want Mark to be able to see. But it's definitely not the questions and their answers. Let's try that again. There we are. Now this does make a little bit more sense to me. Mark can see the name of the test and what certificates it applies to. From right here, he can't directly take the test. Over here, though, our administrator can delete the test, edit the test, see what the answers are, and see which are the correct answers specifically. And if there was an issue with the test, our administrator could go in here, add some more answers, maybe change which are the correct answers or not, add more questions, change which certificates they apply to, and so on and so forth. So just to see that happen, let's go ahead and say that this electrical safety certificate or test also applies to our CNC certificate. And let's edit that. And now from Mark's perspective over here, we can see that it listed out CNC. I would kind of like those to show up on different lines though. So let's put an LI tag in front of that. Something like that perhaps. There we are, that looks a little bit better. So now if we go in here, if Mark selects that option, it takes him to the certificate. And from that certificate, again, it's just kind of showing what tests it requires to get the certificate. Remember, because certificates can be made up of multiple tests. So there might be 3 or 4 tests that have to be passed to get certified on it. But from here, he can go ahead and apply for a certificate. Let's see if this page looks any different for our administrator. And again, the administrator has these delete and edit buttons so that, if they needed to make a change to the name or the required test for their certificate, that could all be done here. Just as a reference here, let's look at the CNC certificate, and if we go into edit certificate, we should see again that it relies on passing both these tests to get certification. So let's say Mark wants to get certified to use the 3D printer. All he has to do is he applies for the certificate, shows him what tests he needs to take to finish his certification, and he can take the tests. So he gets asked a couple questions here, really challenging questions I might add. Which objects are okay to that should say stick into the electrical outlet, not forks or knives, so we'll go with electrical cords. And then, like any good test, it always asks the opposite, which objects are not okay, and in this case it's going to be all of them. He's going to submit the test, and he should get an alert here: congratulations, you passed. The 3D printer certificate has been awarded to you. Real quick over here on our administrator one, let's fix the spelling real quick on those while I'm thinking about it. There we are. Okay, now those read correct. So Mark's been certified now to use the 3D printer. So he would like to go ahead and use it. So he goes to the equipment list and the 3D printer. He can see that currently it's not in use. So he'd like to use it. And again, this is where, in reality you wouldn't be doing this straight through the website. You would be doing this at a machine that's local to that device. So you'd maybe scan a badge, and it would take you in here with your login credentials. And we'll see here in a second. We're going to try it here in a second. When we don't have the credentials, what happens? So he's going to click begin use. It actually updates in the database then to show that the object is in use. Let's, if the administrator got a phone call from another person wanting to use the 3D printer, they could go in here and they could see, and they could say, well, currently it's in use, right? That updates properly, and whenever Mark finishes using it, he's going to click stop use, and again we'll see that the currently in use changes to false. Now our administrator, oddly enough, isn't certified to use any of this equipment, so if our administrator goes to use it, you can see what happens. Gets an alert, you are not certified. You can click the link here, takes you to the certificate where you can apply for it. For our administrator one, well, actually that is taking us to the exact same link, so there's no other way to go in and use the equipment to try and sneak in the back door, basically. Let's look at one other aspect of this. It's just the profile page, right? So users can go in and change stuff. One thing that I thought important was to make sure that people couldn't accidentally get the same username as someone else. So there's a check just to make sure that usernames and emails stay unique through all this as well. And then of course, if you're logged out, none of this other stuff. There's a couple things that will be accessible. I think the equipment list. Actually, maybe we didn't keep any of it accessible. Oh, broke something there. Okay, so that's on certificates. So let's go in and fix that real quick. That'd be our certificates index. We check to see if it's an admin, but we actually just need to check first and say if not logged in. Oh no, I need to do that on the controller, not on in the wrong spot here. So if not logged in, let's go ahead and give a message. Redirect. Let's give that a go again. There we are, requires login, and might need to do the same thing. I was going to say, I think we need to do the same thing on the tests. And just for consistency, let's do the same thing on the equipment screen, just so users get that alert that you've got to be logged in. We're not just quietly redirecting them all over the place. Okay, there we are. So let's try that again. Looks good. That's better. And if someone tried to, just jump straight to the equipment page, maybe they've seen that URL, it actually works too. I don't like that. Or do I? So go through and add in a couple of these. people can't just manually enter in. Okay, so I'm going to make a note of that here real quick to go in and update some of these. Just going to put a note in the README real quick here, so not taking up time on this video. Alright. Well, so we'll get that fixed and updated here. And the one other thing that I wanted to touch on that was an issue that I'd run into was the table names and model names. So I don't recall seeing this in any of the labs, which is why it definitely caught me off guard. But this idea that when we have a model such as user, right? That user active record is going to look for a table to associate with that user, and that table should have the name users, right? It's just pluralizing the name. For our question, it's going to look for a table with the name questions. Where I got stuck was I have this model called equipment. So me being me, I just kind of thought that means that I need a table called equipments. Well, it turns out that Ruby doesn't. Equipment sounds funny, right? It's not grammatically correct, but it turns out that Ruby's a little bit smarter, especially if I spell it correctly. Ruby thinks through this a little bit more intelligently than I do, and it knows that the plural of equipment isn't equipment, it's still just equipment. If you had a table for a mouse, and you needed to make if you had a model for a mouse and you needed to make a table for it, active record is actually going to look for a table called mice. So just another good thing to keep in mind when you're making your tables here. You don't just add an S to the end. It actually has to be the how you would properly pluralize the word. So anyway, I think that concludes the walkthrough for Creative Hub here. I'm going to go in and fix a couple of these issues that I found during the walkthrough and get them pushed to the GitHub. So anyway, thanks for watching and have a good day.